What is up, everybody? So, one thing I gotta make sure that I make clear, since a lot of players, they haven't seen the video. Okay, so I did announce the giveaway for the Camilla account. Okay, so if you guys haven't seen it, I will link the video where I announce it. It was at the end of the video. I can announce it right here, but it was in fact a really long name. I'll post that up right here. Boom. This is the name of the giveaway winner for the Camilla account. So if this is you, make sure you message me on YouTube. I have yet to receive a message. You have until the end of the week, until this Friday, until I choose a new winner. So make sure you send me a message and make sure that's clear, okay? Alright, so now that we've got that out of the way, let's get right into the video. So now, as you guys see now, this is the title. No Verdehile, no problem. Now, of course, I gotta give this brilliant saying or whatever credit where credit is due from Obi Newbie. When I was talking to him, made a clever remark on that. So I was like, all right, yeah, that's definitely, you know, something that I have yet to touch upon and have been planning to make a video on. But a lot of players keep assuming that just because you don't have a Verdehile that you can't do Dragons B10. Now, this is not true. And I'm going to tell you why, alright? Ignore Verdehile. Okay, sure, I have Verdehile in there, okay? He's a good monster, so I'm going to use him. But of course, you don't need him for Dragons B10. If you're this is for just starting out for Dragons B10, and I'll show you some teams that you can run without Verdehile for more speedier compositions. Now, I will do a run with the slower composition for you free-to-play players that are just starting out, so that you guys can get a kind of a feel on what you can run when you first start. This is what I'm going to be running with Farmer Phil when I reach Dragons B10. I still need to play on the account. I've been playing a little bit more on my main account, but I'll go back to Farmer Phil and start working on Dragons B10 as well as Veramos Fusion. I'm really close. So this is basically what you want to do when you start Dragons B10 is you want to focus more on trying to survive. You don't necessarily need a ton of damage. I know a lot of players keep going on about how you need some nuker and all this crazy stuff. You really don't. Okay? Remember what I was talking about? Veramos and Belladillion. Those two monsters and then some kind of attack bar booster. Those monsters tend to be the trio that you use in basically every Kairos. Now, okay, so ignore the attack bar booster, right? Veramos, Belladillion. Those two you will use in a lot of places in the game, really. You use Veramos and Belladillion in Trial of Ascension. You can use Belladillion in Rifts. You use Veramos in Arena and Belladillion in Arena. You can use Veramos for farming reps. You can use both of them in Kairos, right? Not for Necro. You can use Bella and Necro, but not Veramos so much. But you can use them practically anywhere, almost anywhere. So those two monsters are absolutely the most core monsters that you can get. They are the most core monsters you will ever find in the game. Most overused, okay? Now that we've got that established, how are we going to do the damage to the dragon, okay? So, you got Veramos for cleansing, you got Belladillion for heal, you got Beretta for the speed lead. Of course, speed lead is always awesome to have. Now we need some kind of attack bar booster. What are we going to run if we don't have Verdehile? So here is where people get confused. A lot of people assume that just because the dragons fire, they can't run any wind units, which is absolutely not the case. You can run Bernard. You can run Bernard. Now, yeah, you will need some decent runes. You do not need the stats that I have, okay? My stats are pretty decent, right? He's running 30k HP. You don't need that much, but you will use Bernard in the later game, so you can 6-star him early on if you have some decent Swift runes, which you should if you're farming GB10 at an early pace, and then when you're ready to move on to Dragons B10, you should at least have some half-decent runes to run on your Bernard. Okay, so that being said, you know, you want to make sure that he can be tanky enough to run, but if you don't have the good runes for Bernard, of course, you can run Megan. Megan is an absolutely fantastic monster to run in DB10. Now, of course, my Megan, the runes are just kind of placeholders. I was just testing out some things with my bomber teams. But of course, I have not 6-starred her yet. I don't really have any decent runes on her. You could run her at 5-star if you get some good HP spots on slot 4 and 6. I won't be able to run her, unfortunately, to show you guys since I just don't have the runes for it. But she does work. She works wonderfully. Let's take a look at those skills. She increases the attack bar of all allies by 20%, and increases the attack power and defense for 2 turns. Now this does cool down to 4 turns, which is really decent, okay? But she also removes beneficial effect. Now this does go up to 100%, and it's quite nice, okay? So you do remove the buff on the boss, which is an extra buff removal, not just Verdehile. And then of course, you do continuous damage on the first skill. Very, very useful for dealing damage to the boss. Extra damage, so you can get past that last 30%. Okay, so now that we got that established, what are some other ones you can run? Now we're not just talking free to play, here, because not all players are stuck with 0 summons. People have summoned, so you can use stuff like Orion. Orion does work. Now you will need some good stats on him as well. Be careful. You need to make sure he can survive. But since he's a water monster like Megan, you can get away with a little bit lower stats than Bernard. But this is another ATB booster that you can use instead of Verdehile. Now it's not as consistent as Verdehile, but it still does basically, it has its uses. So now that we've got established that we need some kind of ATB booster, now you don't have to have one. But if you don't have one, if you're not as speedy, you will need to run some other type of cleanse, or you're going to need to run immunity. If you have Chloe, you can run Chloe teams. Like you can run Chloe. Honestly, I could throw this in there and she would work. If you don't have Chloe, you can run stuff like Draco. Well, Draco's not as great. It doesn't cleanse. It's just 2-turn immunity. Not really as special. Now Veramos should be enough. It should be enough. If you have enough speed on him, he should be swift right now for you starter players. He should be swift with around 180 or higher speed. Okay? So, if you have him on swift, you're above 180, you've got at least 20 to 25,000 HP with your runes. Make sure you max those runes, right? Your slot 2 and 4 and 6. Then you should be okay here. Same with your Verdehile, and your Beretta should be on despair runes. Just be careful with that. So if you do have Megan, run Megan instead of Bernard, depending on which one has better runes. What you can do, you can run a 5-star Kodamaya if you have some decent runes. You can run other types of monsters that you have. You could run Colleen actually for a second heal. I could show that run as well. You can run other healers that you get. You could run Praha, Chasoon. You could run Emma if you have Emma, the water, water Neostone agent, right? I love the Neostone agents. They're so cool looking. But the water one also works. I don't have one, so I can't show you, but if you have one, that can also work for a double heal. Basically anything that can help your survival. So for that 5th slot, if you're just starting out, you're going to want some other type of cleanser or another healer. Now, the only farmable monster I have here pretty much is Colleen, and over here is Kodamaya. So I'm going to go ahead and run Kodamaya just to show you, since Kodamaya is one of the monsters that I have on Farmer Phil built up, and most likely you will have Kodamaya at least 5-starred at this point for you players that are starting to move from GB10 to DB10. So this is a run that you can basically try out and run, and you rely on the despair stunts from both Veramos, since he'll run with his second skill. He won't be on despair, but he will run on his second skill, he stuns, and then the despair stuns from Beretta. So let's go ahead and try this run, and I'll go ahead and speed it up. Let's go here. Okay, so I went ahead and paused it here because there is something we need to discuss before we get into the boss fight. Now first off, if you guys are watching closely, you'll notice my Veramos was pretty close to dying on the 3rd stage. Now my Veramos has about 26,000 HP, so ideally you will want more than 25,000 for consistent runs. Everything that could have went wrong on that stage. So they hit defense break on the 1st tower. The 2nd tower hit Veramos with another critical hit, and then Zyros actually didn't use his 3rd skill, which would have done less damage. He used his 1st skill. Now 1st skill typically does more damage when you're doing single target versus an AoE skill. The AoE skills do less damage because they're damaging multiple monsters. So that 1st skill could have killed him. Everything that could have went wrong, but we still survived because we had enough HP. So that's something that we need to discuss. You don't need violent runes specifically. You just need to make sure that you have enough HP on all of your monsters to survive. Now, of course, the crystal towers have no attribute advantage. They're all neutral, so they're not going to target Bernard specifically. So just because he's a wind monster doesn't mean he's going to get defense broke on every single stage, right? The crystal towers have no attribute advantage against Bernard. But the problem is he has a wind attribute going into the boss stage, so he's probably not going to be landing his defense break and attack break as often as you would think, since he will glancing hit a lot. So the thing that we do need to realize going into the boss stage is the fact that we will target boss. We have Beretta, we have dots, sure, but we do not want to target specifically the towers because the left tower has significantly lower HP than the right tower, so if you do end up killing one of the towers with direct damage, not dots, direct damage, you will get counterattacked by the dragon, and any monster with lower than like 30 to 35k HP will get one shot. So you will lose a monster, and if you're not running a reviver, which is not farmable or free to play, you have to get pretty good lucky summons to get a good reviver, then you're out of luck. So it's good when you're running Beretta to target straight for boss. Now you'll notice here we are targeting only boss, so that's good. Now we're going to go ahead and auto it, and let's see how this pans out. If it fails, we can discuss what went wrong and we can improve from that. If not, no big deal, we pass the run, good on us. One thing also, if you guys do fail a run consistently, it's good if you want to try to get a team that works, refill it until you pass it, or at least until you get further enough into the boss where you can see what went wrong, and see what went wrong and then build off of those mistakes. That's the best way to see it, because if you just end it right as you die, you'll never know if that specifically keeps happening, that's the problem, or if that was just a bad RNG part. So here we go, we'll go ahead and start it, and then we'll go ahead and fast forward it so you guys don't have to sit through like 2 minutes of video. So right there at the end, you'll see that my Veramos did in fact die. That is because he did use his AoE skill and did direct damage to the Crystal Tower. That was just complete unlucky. Don't think that that's consistent at all. Of course, my attack and my crit damage is a little bit higher than normal for a Veramos since I do have more substantially higher runes. So that's something you guys won't have to worry about when you do your runs. That just kind of happens sometimes out of bad luck. Sometimes it'll be Beretta. Sometimes it'll be Veramos. It just happens to the AoE monsters. But it's a unique thing, so you got to be careful for that last 30% HP, but you'll notice that we still made it through. If you guys looked carefully, you'll notice that Veramos actually didn't violent proc with any of the dots on. So that'll just kind of show you that Veramos can remove the dots fast enough, and I'll show you my runes really quickly. Of course, you don't need like crazy runes, you don't need violent runes. Sitting at about 24, almost 25,000 HP and 183 speed. Of course, accuracy isn't that high, the resistance isn't that high, the crit damage and the crit rate isn't even that high, and the attack isn't even that high. Defense, okay. HP is reachable for players that are actually just doing DB10 if they put on Swift runes. The speed is more than reachable actually. Speed, HP, and that's really all it takes. If you guys notice that the violent procs didn't play a single part in Veramos. Now it will play a part in Belladon, so you will need to make sure that your Belladon is tanky and fast. You will need to make sure that your Belladon is fast. So that one might be a little bit harder to reach. Now, of course, if you have Megan with that defense buff and the other buff removal, a lot easier for you guys. Trust me, Megan is a better one to do here than Bernard. But of course, Bernard is the one that I have 6-starred, and with better runes, of course, I would not be able to pull it off with Megan, since to me, Megan is not necessary for my main account. So this just kind of shows you guys, if you don't have Verdehile and you're just starting out Dragon Speed 10, no problem. You guys don't have to sweat it. There are plenty of monsters to use out there. you really don't need to just wait for a Verdehile summon, and you definitely don't need to think that Dragon's B10 is exclusively farmable for players that have Verdehile. That is definitely not the case. Honestly, you don't even need a cleanser once you get good enough runes and stuff like that. There's so many teams out there that you can run. My team right here is not the only team out there with farmable units and stuff. You don't even need a 6-star Konamaya. You could run it with a 5-star Konamaya, or you could even run it with a second healer. It's not that big of a deal. But the main idea here is to run some kind of team that can run it fast enough to make sure that your Veramos keeps cleansing the dots. You want to at least get 2 turns. 2. Make sure it's 2 before the boss goes again, because you'll also have to deal with 1, the dots that the boss puts on, and then the dots that the left tower puts on, okay? So, if you guys are focused on farming Dragon's B10, just make sure that your Veramos goes 2 times before that the boss goes, and you will be more than fine. It also helps if you bring some AoE slowness, like Spectra, if you have a Spectra. Beretta works wonders if you don't have a team tanky enough to support some kind of nuker, or let's say if you don't have a Theomars, like maybe you had unlucky summons. No biggie, you can run Beretta. It's a little bit slower, but it still runs like around 4 to 5 minute runs, which is not that bad considering you're running 0 nukers. Also, you have Veramos to do some dots in that first skill, so also very smooth. You just got to be careful. Some RNG stuff, like everything that could have gone wrong, this run went wrong. I'm serious. It's like Veramos broke a tower, which ended up killing him towards the end, which could have cost us the run. We also did have a little bit of a hiccup around stage 3 where Veramos got defense broke and then hit 2 more times after that. Very, very close. But that's why we make these kinds of teams, to prepare for the scenarios that actually do turn against us. So it's good to see that this run did actually succeed with 2 hiccups that actually very rarely happen, just to show you guys that this team can be actually quite consistent. So let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. I definitely think this is something that needed to be said, since a lot of players feel like that Verdehile is a necessary monster for farming Dragon's B10, which is definitely not the case. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. Also, I want to see what your guys' speed Dragon's B10 team is, or just Dragon's B10 team in general. Let me know what it is in the comment section below, and I will see you guys in the next episode. Stay awesome, guys.